Still burning. Keep wondering while I ask, keep twerking the DJs on my team. Okay, we're gonna get started. Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you all to our Tuesday Talk series with Womxnhouse, brought to you by Norwest Community Collaborative and Norwest Gallery of Art. This program is to do a deep dive on BIPOC women artists and art business owners. And we have been doing, this will be our third talk. A little bit about Womxnhouse. Womxnhouse Detroit is an artist and curatorial residency located on the northwest side of Detroit. It's actually located in my childhood home. I started this first with an exhibition called Womxnhouse Detroit in 2021, where we had 14 amazing women artists of all colors exhibit their work, talking about the what it was like today being a woman and artist in the world today. It's an inclusive art residency. We provide housing, studio space, and just a platform for artists to create and grow. The initiative is to build Detroit neighborhoods, and we look forward to many more cohorts to come. Today, we're going to be talking with Miss Alaina Simone. Alaina is the founder and director and CEO of Alaina Simone Incorporated, an art gallery and artist liaison consultancy focused on internationally recognized emerging and established artists, galleries, collections, and institutions. Alaina Simone Productions, LLC, a production company specializing in creative partnerships between luxury brands, cultural influencers, and contemporary artists, actively working across disciplines, practicing in their fields. Her independent practice, the conceptual DNA that connects her company's focuses on the intersection of race, gender, power, identity, and environment. She has produced and curated exhibitions with corresponding educational programming in the United States and abroad, with leading emerging mid-career and established contemporary artists. This doesn't cover the extensive career and brilliance of Alaina, which we hope to learn more about today. I want to welcome Miss Amazing, my friend, Alaina Simone. Give it
Thank
up.
you, Asia. Thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. And I'm so excited to, I'm not there, but I was just in Detroit, like I was saying, a couple of weeks ago. So it's really nice to have this time with all you ladies. So thank you for being here and thank you for having me. Yes. Yeah. So should I share my screen?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get right into it.
Okay. Let's see. How come it's not? Okay. All right. So Asia, so proud of what you're doing. Such a to take your mother's legacy and push on, especially for women, is completely needed right now. And in my practice, I think about art as a catalyst for change. And a lot of the projects and a lot of, what I'm thinking about, I'm always thinking about just, the global aspect of everything, not just here, but I'm thinking about the diaspora and, that, we're everywhere. Hello? Oh, that's okay. Someone's mic. So I'm from an area right outside of Flint, Michigan, by the name of Flushing, Michigan. So I'm from Flushing, but growing up around Flint has a lot of public art. So there's a lot of public art with the Mott Foundation, which is there. So I grew up like playing with art, playing on art. We had art and it was just, the Mott family put art all around Flint. I don't think, when people think about Flint, they think about Michael Moore, but they don't really know and think about like just the influx of like a lot of Black young professional people that moved to Flint in the 70s and the 80s to take care of, teachers, that were coming from a lot of these HBCU colleges to teach some of the, school children of the, people that were working in the shops. So I grew up in a very, kind of a tight knit community, but there was art everywhere in Flint. And every summer it was King Chavez Park. And, and that was the program that was at Michigan State, University of, and U of M. And from Flint, like as a basic foundation, as an artist, I always took classes, and I always knew that I grew up drawing, painting, sculpting, but not really seeing anyone, who looked like me have a career out of being an artist. I didn't really know what that was. And I remember, like, right after college, right as I was in college, I got a call from my cousin, and she said, I met this guy, his name is George Anamdi, and he has a gallery. And I was like, well, what is that? And I remember in my head saying, like, what is that? And who is this, African-American man who owns this gallery? And at that time it was in Birmingham. So after college, I worked, I went all over the gamut, because I didn't really know how I was gonna, or how I was gonna make my way through. But I started working at GM, General Motors, and I was interning there, and I got a, job right after school at GM, but I didn't want to do that. And I didn't want to go, they wanted to move me to Shreveport. And I said, no, I don't want to go to Shreveport. I wanted to stay, around that, in Michigan. I wanted to be around my family and my mother. So I moved to Detroit. And then I just started, meeting people. And, in Detroit, I was working at Neiman Marcus Couture, because when I was at GM and I was in the marketing department, they told me that everything came from fashion, like all the foreshadowing, everything, like the colors of the cars, everything came from fashion. But as I started, looking around, I was like, well, fashion is really getting their cues from the art world. So it's really from the museums, from the art world, then, then it trickles down to all these other industries. And this was what I'm showing you right now. This was one of our first auctions. This is Obama's first election. And this is in Anamdi Gallery in New York. That's Derek Adams, Ayanna Evans, and Ayanna Jackson. And we had at that time, we thought we were really I think we raised like $30,000, which we thought was a lot of money. Now, Derek Adams art, where it goes for like maybe $150,000, $200,000. But, over 2 decades ago, we really thought that, we were really killing it with 30 grand. So, looking at abstraction, I went towards abstraction, especially, with the, coming in through the background of, Anamdi and what that was with Frank Bowling and Ed Clark, and, looking at storytelling through abstraction, and looking at how, just I've always loved artists who, it's just not so literal. It's, something that I, just always left me, thinking. And so what I love about what I do is empowering artists, increasing their signal to wider audiences, expanding notions of information, challenging notions of digital art, challenging notions of art history, reimagining the Black diaspora history, and developing relations, and creating paths and visions for new platforms. And I feel like this is such an exciting time, because we are at this, intersection where, we have technology where it's 20 years ago, the landscape has changed. And even the way that artists are using technology, with NFTs and everything that's happening right now, it's exciting, because we're able to also speak, instantly, globally, not to, whatever, my age, but we used to have to fax, you can't really see a painting through a fax machine, it's just always getting better. So thinking about technology, sound, of course, Detroit, is known for techno music, looking at photography, the moving image, and also video. These are a lot of the artists I work with are interdisciplinary. So they're always if they're, the majority of the artists I work with are actually also musicians, which is interesting. It's just that, always about creating, and, they may not even say that they're a musician, but they're playing the trumpet or they're playing the drum, they're always doing something, creating, putting something out into the world. So this was a project. This is Rashad Newsom. This is a project I did in St. Croix. So this is all about, I went to St. Croix. I was invited by an artist by the name of Karis Kennedy. And this was in 2016. Now, at this time, in 2016, I had worked in a traditional African art gallery for 5 years. So working with Merton Simpson's collection, which Merton Simpson was known as one of the probably the best, traditional African and oceanic dealers in this world, like, really, sold in the, billions. But Black man from South Carolina, spoke fluent French, so if you can just imagine how he was operating across, the seas in like the 60s, and not only was he selling traditional African art, but he was also selling modern art. But as a student of Hell Woodruff and Romare Bearden, he was looking at abstraction through the lens of, these, he was actually like dissecting it, looking at it through the lens of traditional and, African art and antiquities, which to me is like something, he understood that and Hale understood that. And Merton actually, as a painter, as an artist, started selling, African art so that he could support his practice, which, became one of the biggest or most respected African art galleries in the world. So this performance, and I'm talking about that because that really changed the way of, how I looked at everything, looking at, working with traditional African art, looking at ritual, looking at, traditional practices. I really started to, expand, because I wasn't really working with performance artists, even though a lot of artists that I work with, like I said, they're interdisciplinary, so they're doing everything. But this was an opportunity in St. Croix in 2016 to work with artists, like Rashad Newsom, who was, this is like an interactive piece called 5. So my project in St. Croix is called Take 5. And it's like, Asia was saying, like, I really, when I'm thinking about artists and artists I'm really interested in, I'm thinking about, the intersection of like, power, the environment, race, identity, and gender. And so this piece 5 by Rashad had everything. It had all those elements, and really 5 here is the 5 elements of Vogue. So the dancers are hooked up to X boxes and, he's conducting them. And on the side, you can't really see it, but there's like a, there's a full on band that, that he's put together with, performers from from New Orleans, where he's from, and then also the islands. So, they brought the island sound in there. So it's like, when doing these immersive sort of a projects and spaces, especially a space that I'm not from, the USVI, but it's like I had to really stay there and, speak to the community and see, learn more about them so that we could try to bring something unique, to this space. So on an island like this, where there is no white box, how do you make a white box? And for me, this is fun because I get to go in here and pay all these people. I get to pay everyone, to like, how do we make it's like paying everyone to be on a, art project and just figure things out. So we had to, get it, fly in this equipment, this technology. And like, there's really St. Croix. I mean, Crucians are some of the most brilliant people I've ever met, the way that, just like ingenious in the way that, they were able to, make everything work. And this performance was like standing room only. And yeah, so this was 2016, Take 5, Rashad Newsom. And, we brought the dancers over from New York. It was just, it was a really good time. But coming back to Detroit, and I'm kind of going like non-linear because, just so you guys can see like kind of how I think, which is, all, it's like I think abstract as well, but there are these lines that come together. So 555 in Detroit was the first nonprofit art community project artist residency that I worked with. And I actually went into 555 to get a studio myself. But I ended up advocating for artists. And they said, Alaina, can you speak for us? They wanted me to do PR. And for me, that was fun because it's like, I hadn't really been practicing art in a long time. So it, meant a lot to, be able to, kind of, speak for, my friends and help, get things that were needed in the art community. in Detroit. But then we'll go backwards a little bit. So when we're talking about video, so now I work with on paint cans and politics. I don't know if you guys remember when this guy named the Turtle in Detroit was bombing all the buildings. So that was like over that was so long. So this was one of my first like kind of like documentary films, but it was started by Tony Smith, Detroit native. Tony now lives in LA, but he was really just like a genius, tech genius, but really, always like, using art and technology together. So yeah, so I really, this is called Technology Films, was the name of his company. And I worked with them for a little while, which makes sense when you think about this project. So I worked with Damon Dash. This was in 2010. So Damon had just left, he and Jay-Z had just broken up. And Damon got a big building in Tribeca. And friends of mine said, Alaina, we want you to come down, and just, curate this space and start, for me, it was like a kind of the beginning of how to start a, begin a gallery. And I picked this piece because, as you see in the middle, is a dream catcher by Musa Hickson, who Musa was a participant in another project I work with, artist residency and sculpture park in Switzerland called Verbier 3D Foundation. Musa also went to Hampton University, which is my alma mater. So this, dream catcher, Damon's nephews were there. And so Damon made them stand under the dream catcher and write a full album. So to me, this was like, so it's an album called Dreamcatcher. So I love the influence of like how, the kids there were really like sponges, Damon's, they were the ones like, you can't see, but it's like, I have a Frank Bowling back here. There's like real artwork in this space, and they were just absorbing it up. And it's actually a good album. It's a good album. And so also in this space, we had under 100. So at any given moment, Damon would say, Erykah Badu is going to be in the basement. We close the doors at 99. So at 99 people go, so, and you can see like in the back, we spray painted and, I had graffiti artists come in. So it's kind of always using art to activate all these different spaces. So this is Verbier 3D Foundation. I'm a founding board member. I've been on the board since 2011. And this actually is, well, this is kind of like, this is interesting, but this is me actually. This is by Timothy, this bust figure. This is Timothy Talbot Holmes, who is an artist, who is one of our first artists in this program. We now have 15 pieces on top of the mountain there in Switzerland. But this piece, I believe, is back in France with Timothy. But he was, that year we had 7 artists, and now we only have like 1 artist at a time. It's a much different project, but we kind of, the first year out, we're like, oh, let's get everyone there. And then we're like, wait, 7 artists, it's just a lot because, you're really in a remote, there's, it's Switzerland, there's not that much going on. And during ski season, there's 1 million people there. But when it's not ski season, there's like maybe 4,000 people in town, So it's kind of, you really, yeah, it's a lot to get used to if you're not from an area that's so, remote, if you will. This is another piece by an artist, French artist, Eve Bailey Florent. And she is based between France and Brooklyn. And I love this piece because it's called Our Impermeable Walk. And so she can, she actually performs on this piece. So I love, yeah, so it's like a performance piece and it flaps down like a wing. This is another performance by Oshana James. This is in St. Croix for Gowie, the Deceitful Fellow. And this was, this was actually performed at a woman's home in St. Croix. So when we went to St. Croix, we kind of like, so doing these projects is also about marking spaces and landscapes. So it's like, this piece was performed on a woman's property who was basically like, when she was brought over, on the boat, the captain said, I will marry you. and I'll, you're going to be free. So she married him on the boat. By the time they got to the shore, he divorced her, right? And so then she was thrown back, and she was enslaved. So she spent like 11 years proving her freedom, and then she was able to buy her family back. And this property that's in Frederickstead, where this performance was, where Oshana performed, is where her property was. So this is just so you can see like how I like to mix. So this, the artist I was talking about, Eve, who did the wing piece in the mountains. These are her drawings to the left there. And this is a mix of, art from the Alan Stone collection, mostly West African art. There's some Cameroon pieces there, and there's a painting there by Joan Thorne. But I just love, you can see like abstraction through these traditional pieces. And even weathered, they're just, the grace and beauty just, it shines. And it's like, they're even better the more the more that they're touched in a way. So this is another project that I started, I was a part of during COVID, the pandemic, Puzzle with a Purpose. So because it's like, we just wanted to engage with artists, and I received a call from Rachel, who was, the principal, the founder of this project. And, we just, this was all for like Black Lives Matter, and just, to do something positive during the pandemic, because people wanted to engage. And maybe everyone can't afford, like, business wasn't bad during, the pandemic. A lot of people were buying art, but those that, didn't, have thousands of dollars, they could, buy a puzzle. And then people really enjoyed, this project. There's hundreds of artists that are participating in it now, all across the world. And I just wanted to show this. This is Ella Natsui next to a Makonde mask. It's just, this is the sort of mix that I love. And, Ella Natsui with the bottle caps and the, recycled materials, and then, the Makonde. I just love the, this sort of a conversation. And David Antonio Cruz also performed. This is in St. Croix. This is called Green, How I Want You Green. And this was probably, David is an amazing painter, but his performances are even, this is part, in part Spanish, part English, but I absolutely, the first time I saw it, I couldn't stop crying. It's so beautiful. It's about Garcia Lorca and this idea of wanting and not being able to have, and he performed it inside of a slave master's house at the Wim Sugar Plantation Museum in St. Croix. And you guys, when I tell you that a dove flew through in the middle of it, it was an amazing, like, it was a white bird. It flew through, and it was a beautiful experience. It's almost like reclaiming the space back. This is a pop-up. This is like how you can see how I look at abstraction, which is like all over. I had a pop-up gallery with one of the founders from Verbier 3D, Madeline Paterno, who was my partner on this project. This was in Soho. So there was her artist studio was there, but then I wanted to invite other artists to come in, and, we called it time and space, and also like a meeting point, and there was also a kitchen to the side. So it's like you came in, it didn't really feel like a gallery. You felt like it was a space where you could just like kind of like, because a lot of people, I feel like, going behind the gallery doors, because galleries can be kind of cold sometimes, just because of, it's a white box, it is a white box. So we tried to make it a little bit more inviting. So the first thing that you saw when you came in was a kitchen. So people automatically relax. You get them, glass of water, some tea, whatever they want to drink. And they just like kind of, hung out, which was, it was, this is a project that I would love to, do again. This is the National Arts Club. So I do these sorts of talks. That's DJ Spooky, Paul Miller, and Max Tyker of Gagosian Gallery. I'm in the audience here. And this is, we invited DJ Spooky to Verbier, to 3D, for a performance that he did there. And so this is, at the National Arts Club in Gramercy. So, I love to give these sorts of talks, education is a lot of like what I do. And I put this in there because this is such an influence to me. This was like me at 20, the one in the middle. Not really, but really, So this is important because it's really like, just spending all that time in Detroit right after college was really informative to me of just about, thinking about, sound and, the first artist I met, the first techno artist I met was Theo Parrish, and he like is big on sound sculpture. And I'd never met anyone who really like, what is sound sculpture, who has a degree in sound sculpture. Like that's a thing. So, these brilliant, Black, men and women, that were just like traveling the world was just, ground, breaking to me. And this, I just wanted to show some of my influences. Ed Clark was a painter that I was lucky enough, while working with Anamdi, to spend a lot of time with. And I just love his work and his use of color. And just also, it's like, people do talk about how I use the broom, but he said, to me, when he said, well, my people are laborers. So we sweep, we clean up. So he used the broom. And there are other artists coming out of that generation. Some used, Adger Cowens used what do you call it? Afro pick. Some of them use Afro pick. So they used all these different tools, but they were abstracting not only the image, but also abstracting, the process. So these are artists that I love. And also I just had to show this. This is a piece that is now in an institution that I sold to a private collector, but you can see like, this is like that mix of old and new. He has on a hat. He's, this is in the Congo. It has a colonial hat, a gun. So it's like, you can see like the old and the new, like kind of just, it's all there. Another piece from Merton's collection. I just wanted to show like how fine Merton's collection is, and just the notion of provenance, like in terms of ownership, and Merton as a collector, but also as a painter. And then, one who was really working hard to make sure that a lot of these records, in archives with traditional African art were intact, and he's probably one of few Black men that that are included in provenance when it comes to traditional African art. Really, it's like you don't see our names. This is Howard Dina. This was, a piece from the 70s, these vector drawings. And I just, think this is interesting because she was so far ahead of the game when it, comes to, looking at, digital art and how she was drawing and, over this image and looking at, velocity. It's just Howard Dina. I just wanted to show you guys some of my influences. And Barbara Nessum is another one of my influences. I worked with Barbara for some time here in the city. And, she was one of the first artists to really, work with IBM, to figure out how to draw like arcs. They called her the arc lady at, when she was like working on the, computers, but also extremely innovative. She's in her late 80s now, still draws and paints almost every day. And she was like her roommate was Gloria Steinem. So if you can imagine, like, someone like, so to me, she's just such a powerful figure. She worked, she was like, I'm not, she didn't have any children. She didn't get married until she was 41, and married like, the love of her life at 41, but she just kept working. And as a woman, what someone told her is, when she went to a gallery to try to be represented by a gallery in the 70s and the 80s, they said, well, you're too pretty, you're just going to get married. So just work on that. Like, the things that people say, this is Fred Eversley, another artist that I work with, who I just think is genius when you talk about, abstraction. And, he was at MIT, and the way that he was able to, use science to create like this, this resin piece that's insane. And he's been working in this vein since the 80s, 70s, 80s. So this is Fred. He's major now, but this, I'm just saying the trajectory of these careers, it's not overnight. Then I wanted to show you guys some of what I really love to do. This is an artist I work with, Tahir Karl Karmali, who's Kenyan, from Kenya, based now in Brooklyn. And I like to do these kind of collaborations with brands. So it's like, this is far from Tahir's practice, but this is a campaign that we did with Martell. And this was based off a series that, you know, one of his, an art series that he had called Jew Kali that he did in Kenya. And someone saw in Paris, and then Martell contacted him and was like, we want you to create a campaign out of this. So this was an opportunity to really work with, you know, musicians, and, you know, we did the original score for the piece, and, you know, animators. So I love projects like this. It kind of takes us out of the, you know, kind of like gallery zone of just like the everyday of like, you know, create, you know, but this is, it's commercial, but it's still using art in an interesting way. So I just wanted to show you guys. I just love this. I mean, so this was actually released in China and the continent. So this is another artist I work with, Baron Claiborne. You know, and this is that iconic Biggie photo. So this to me is just like, you know, just speaking of like culture, it's like to have these giants still around. I mean, Baron is based in Brooklyn. It's like amazing. And to know that, like, you know, I think, you know, he tells like how, yeah, I mean, I don't think that whoever was there said, oh, you're going to make him look like Hamburglar, but he's like, no, trust me. And it's like, you know, just being able to trust, you know, that artistic vision, and this created, like, this is one of his last shots, right? So this is like iconic that this was Baron. It's like just that eye. Adra Cowan's another photographer who's very near and dear to my heart. And then just like interactive pieces like this, Benton Bainbridge, who's at Andrew Freeman Home. Just really working with technology in just very interesting ways. This is called Life Size, Alyssa Jill. And this piece was curated into an exhibition that I did with Khadaf Paris over the summer. I'll keep going because this, if I can. And so just sharing, you know, a couple articles, and, you know, because it is all about press. It's like a lot of what we do doesn't necessarily get talked about. And that's okay. But, you know, it is, you know, when you do get a mention, it's nice. And that's pretty much it, guys. So I'll, you know, I can stop sharing my screen, or what do you want me to do, Asia? Take questions?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you. That was amazing. I mean, it's amazing how your career just has gone all over the world, all over the globe. And so, yes, we are actually going to start taking some questions. I had a question, you know, by you going to all these various different places, experiencing all this art, you know, how has that kind of shaped your palette, you know, as a curator, or just as an artist, or overall?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely shaped my palette, because it's like what I've learned is just to be open. You know, I'm really like, you know, being, you know, because I do love abstraction, it's like there I can always find a line kind of through everything that kind of connects, you know, that can connect. It's really about humanity at the base level of everything for me, you know, and as humans, we're connected. So, you know, I think it's shaped my palette, because it's like I'm able to just look at the world at in a very, you know, kind of simple way, if you will. Like, you know, Barbara Nessum has a piece. It's a flag. And it's like a flag of all these different countries. And there's Polaroids that make up the flag. But each little Polaroid is like, you know, what people do. It's like what we all do. We all wake up, we all, you know, eat, you know, breakfast, we all, you know, have coffee, we all, you know, have drinks with our friends. So it's like all these things that we just do as humans. And it's like, because like when you're looking at a space, it's like, oh my gosh, that seems scary. But when you get really close, it's like, wait, we all do the same stuff. You know what I mean? Like we all love, we all like, you know, so at a base level, it's like we're all human, and we have more in common than we don't. That's what I always like to think. So it's like when I'm thinking about art, you know, aesthetics, I mean, taste is one thing, but you know, like what, you know, I like aesthetically, but for the most part, it's like I'm looking, what is excellence? It's like, I'm looking for, yeah, I'm looking for something that's just, that's different and pushed and pulled. And yeah, and maybe that is the rawness of Detroit mixed with, you know what I mean? Like I don't know that this, I don't, yeah. So yeah, I'm always looking.
All right. All right. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to just chime in, unmute yourself. I have a list, so I can answer. I can answer all my questions. So, how important do you think that it is to have spaces that are dedicated for BIPOC women, artists of color in this climate today in the art world? And
I
why
think,
do you think that it's important?
yeah, I mean, I think it's very, I mean, I went to a historically Black college. I went to Hampton University, right? So I think that, you do need that nurturing, to at least to know that, there are people that care, because it can, if I feel like if I hadn't had that experience of Hampton, I feel like my, experience, like, in my work life would be different, because you do have like those shoulders, because you've been with these giants, and they've kind of, propelled you up a little bit. So I think having a space dedicated to women is, especially right now, is extremely important and valuable. And it should be, yeah, I mean, I would like to see a space like that. Like I would like to see it connect all over the world in a way, because like what we can learn from each other is, because we all have these shared experiences. um yeah, and again, it's like, like when we come together, we learn that, like, oh, okay, like our experiences aren't as different as we think, because it's like, as women, like we all go through, similar things. Of course it's different, but it's similar. So yeah, I think the community aspect of it and networking aspect of it is valid and important.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I can totally see that. Like when I was coming along, and I feel like I'm always learning and coming along forever. Um,
Hmm.
but back in the day when I graduated from college, I really didn't have a space
Yeah.
to get into. I just didn't have that platform. I mean, if it was out there, they were very few and far between. I mean, the largest or the most coveted internship at that time was the Studio Museum of Harlem, and that was just it, for what I knew. And so for me, I started this specifically because I wanted there to be a space so that, women artists can come together, so that they can commune, they can learn from each other, that they can share their experiences, that
Mhm.
they have a space and to talk freely and openly without
Yeah,
being judged or any of those things. So yeah, absolutely. That's Woman House. Yes.
I
Okay.
love it. I mean, because it's like, and I feel like we were talking about this, like when I first moved to New York, which is like around 2006, right? The galleries weren't paying attention to Black artists. They weren't paying attention to us, so, I always work with everyone. It's like, I've never just worked with, Black or brown or BIPOC. I've always like, cause I like people. So whoever wants to work with me, I lean into. It's like, it's fine, but it's because people weren't paying attention to us. It was kind of like we had this natural safe space where we could kind of be ourselves. And now that, I don't know that that space necessarily exists as much anymore, and so it is good to have spaces like this. I mean, I'm sure that, people have their own individual groups, but I'm saying, like, no one was paying attention. Like I don't even know how many Black owned art galleries in Chelsea. And I mean, now you only have like two or three. So then you probably had, well, now you have like maybe four. Okay. Maybe four, maybe three, four. Then you had like two, three, like you had what, Skoto and Anamdi in Chelsea, and Bill Hodges was there. Like, June Kelly was in Soho. So it's like very small, and in terms of, and something you said that's important, like, in order to intern in the arts, it's like you almost have to have like a family that's going to be able to support you. And as we know, like BIPOC, like that's not always our case. So I had to work. You know what I'm saying? Like when I didn't even know what, I'd never even accepted a internship that I, wasn't, making money, because I didn't think that was fair, and I still think that artists or people that are working as interns deserve something. And I've even paid my interns, and like, and that's the thing, and even that's an investment, so it's like you hope to invest in these interns and, and develop them, but yeah, it's an investment. So yeah, it's needed. It's
Yeah.
definitely needed.
Even piggybacking off of that, can you tell us a little bit about the art of, of business, and how, artists can be more successful in getting their work out there or becoming a more established artist?
Well, I think it's really, there's a lot of different formulas that I see right now, and especially with social media. I can say all that glitters isn't gold. So I think, like what I know is the truth is that, just you have to do the work. I feel like artists need to be in the studio doing the work, and the work is what speaks for itself. Yes, you have to network. That's true. But it's like, when you see people at parties more than you see them in their studio, it's like, where's the work? So I think there's this because the best work, and this is something, I will take this from George Nandi. He said cream rises to the top, and that's true. Cream does rise to the top. So it's like, I would just say do the work. And as you're working, even quietly, you'd be surprised, like, people are going to see you, and like, you want the opinion of curators, art historians. I believe there's a scholarship to it, like, you want to be able to work within that matrix. I think that matrix is what is exciting, beyond just like the sales, because what are sales? Like, so you can make a sale today, but that doesn't mean, like, that those prices are going to stay if you're not doing the work. You have to continue to always do the work. So it's all about, yeah, it's always about, for me, it's about pushing one's practice. And the way to push that practice is outreach to other artists, outreach to other curators, outreach to other, professionals that have the same interests, as you. And that way, like, that network is like, will expand, like how you're navigating through these different spaces, but you have to bring yourself there. You have to show up.
You have to show up. You got to do the work. Fact. Definitely, definitely. That is the truth. Does anybody have any questions?
I had a question.
Yes.
Hi. So I wanted to know how you go about finding new artists or decide which artists you want to represent when you're curating.
I've been really blessed to be surrounded by a lot of amazing artists. But it's also, for me, it's like, just because someone may be technically good doesn't mean that our personalities will fit sometimes. So for me, it's like being in line with, what the artist wants, like what they want for their practice. If I'm able to deliver that, and, kind of usher different things their way, and then what I want for my practice. So it's like, it kind of has to be like a happy medium, if you will, of like, of coming together. It's like, and there's an understanding, there's a trust there. So for me, it's like, I spent a lot of time, even during the pandemic, just looking for artists who I liked aesthetically. And then I would like make these studio visits, like, I would do like 3 to 4 studio visits a week, just because it was a pandemic, and I wanted to keep myself active, so it's like people that I didn't know from all over, from in Italy, I was doing, studio visits in Oklahoma, like just Mexico. Like I was just like reaching out to artists that like I really wanted to get to know, like, and really for me, it's like a personality match. And sometimes you have an exhibition, you're like, it's not going to work. You know what I'm saying? No love loss. It doesn't mean that they're a bad artist. We just don't fit. So I think that, yeah, for me, it's like, again, I'm lucky to be around a lot of amazing artists, but you know, a lot of them I've known for decades. So yeah, but then and then they introduce you to more artists, and it's almost like, oh, okay, if this artist is your friend, then I maybe we'll get along because we, you know, because we're friends and we get, you know, so a lot of the artists that I've worked with have become friends. You know,
Mhm.
I would call them some of my, you know, closest friends and confidants. And I hope they would say the same.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And studio visits, does it matter if they're virtual studio visits or in person?
I mean, I think, you know, like, you know, with lack of a better phrase, you know, you have to get it how you can get it. Like if you can't do this Zoom, if you can't do the in person, a Zoom
Mhm.
is okay. What I always recommend is, so because sometimes on Zoom you can't really see details. So I like for artists to maybe do like a video of
Mhm.
it. So if you can do a video, sometimes is better than even just a picture. So if you do a nice video of the work, then I can, you know, I can kind of imagine a little bit more. In person is always better, but
Yeah.
that's, if it's not an option, it's just not an option, you know? And
Mhm.
working with artists all over, like, you know, in the Middle East and whatever, it's like, it's not always an option. So you have to take, you just have to, yeah, take what you can get.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Okay, which do you create first? The overall idea, concept of exhibition, or finding the artist? Honestly, I think about the idea first. I think about the idea first, and then I think about the artists that fit that idea, who are already working in that vein, because I don't like to, I'm not a big, I'm not big on commissioning works or like saying, oh, I want to, here I'm having an exhibition, create work for this. Like, because to me, that's a little bit contrived. I want it to be like, okay, you're already working, your work is already about the environment. Like right now I'm doing a project in the Bronx. It's called Constellation Lights. So this artist, you know, it's about, you know, constellations, stargazing, remaking the stars. So there's artists like who have, you know, focus on, you know, astrology and things, you know, so it's like, you know, who are those artists? So then you go towards that. So it's like, I like to think of the idea and the concept first, and then see who's already working in that vein, in that direction, and then, you know, curate that way. Mhm. But the majority of the artists that I'm drawn to are at that intersection of identity, power, gender, race, and the environment. So it's kind of, it's already kind of there. Yeah. Any more questions? This has been great, guys. You're muted, Asia.
There I am.
There you go.
Awesome sauce. All of that hit home, touched the soul, went down up in there. Really, really do appreciate you. You're absolutely amazing person, and
Oh,
your
thanks, Asia.
skills and just overall. As a takeaway, what is something that you like, a word of advice that you want to share with our Womxnhouse residents, you know, as artists, as curators, filmmakers?
I would say to, you know, perseverance is the word right now. I would say keep going. I would say don't stop, can't stop, don't stop, won't stop, don't stop. Because the thing is, it's like you just don't stop, because when you look up, it's like somebody's writing a Forbes article about you. You're like, huh? You know, that like, you know, like, and because I'm still thinking like, oh, I have so much work to do to, I'm like, you know, succeeding, da da da. But you don't know, like, you know, who's paying attention, and it doesn't matter. Just keep doing the work. Just keep doing the work and keep pushing, 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 pushing. Don't quit. You know, don't give up. Even when it's hard, it's okay. It's all hard. It's like, if it wasn't hard, you know, those times lead to the even better times. So just keep going. Keep going. And you know, I walk by faith and not by sight. That's me. So that's who I am. And I remember being in Detroit. I'll leave on this, but like when I was in Detroit, I remember saying, I don't know why, because Detroit like doesn't have as much money for the arts, especially in during that time. They weren't really wasn't a lot of money for the arts. It didn't seem like it. And I just remember saying, like, in my head all the time, like, well, if God is taking care of the squirrels, he's going to take care of me. Look at those squirrels. You know, those squirrels, they have so much fun. Like, so it's like, just knowing that we're, you know, you're going to be taken care of. Everything's going to be okay. Just keep going. And it only gets better.
Amen to that. Amen to that. All
Mhm.
right. Well, where can people find you? If they're in BK or they're in New York, where can people find you on social media? What's up?
Alaina Simone .inc, you know, or Alaina Simone. My website is alainasimoneinc.com. You can find me. You know, I'm moving around right now. My next project is in the Bronx at Andrew Friedman Home, which is right across the street from the Bronx Museum. It's going to be Andrew Friedman Home is a artist residency, and also a exhibition space and incubator space and technology lab, and it's a hub. We have artists from all over the world that, you know, come to Andrew Friedman Home, and you can live there. And so I'm there, you know, but I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere. That's kind of how I want it to be. So just hit me up.
Awesome. And we can find that stuff on your website. I just put it in the chat.
Absolutely.
Dope sauce, dope sauce.
Thank
Well,
you.
that concludes our Tuesday talk series. Next week, May 10th on Tuesday, we're gonna have Ricky Reaver, an amazing photographer and artist. And I look forward to seeing you. Thank you so much, Alaina. And you're
Thank you
fabulous.
guys. Thanks for having me. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Asia. Thank you,
Thank
Alaina.
you. Bye, guys.
All right, peace and blessings, everybody.